first episode of the Sleepweaver's stories, a new series from elsewhere and beyond, crafted to bring you peace, relaxation, and restful sleep. I'm Leon, your narrator, and I'm here to guide you into dreamlike tales and timeless adventures. So, let's settle in, take a deep breath, and let's begin. The Frog Prince by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, a young princess put on her bonnet and sturdy shoes and wandered into the woods alone. She enjoyed the quiet, the whispering leaves, and the way the golden light filtered through the trees, casting long, dappled patterns on the mossy forest floor. In the summer eve, birds flitted between the branches, their songs mingling with the rustling breeze. After a while of walking, the princess came upon a spring beneath an old, tall oak tree. The spring was bubbling up from the earth, the surface shimmering like polished glass. And there, the princess decided to rest a while. From her pocket, the princess drew a golden ball. Tossing it up and catching it, she played with practiced ease. The ball gleamed in the evening light, its surface smooth and cool against her fingers. She delighted in the game, feeling the weight of the world slip away with every careful throw. But one time, she threw it far too high. It slipped through her fingers and tumbled away, rolling over the mossy ground before dropping into the spring with a soft splash. The water rippled outward, swallowing the ball whole, and whilst she rushed to the water's edge to peer in, she learnt the spring was deep, far too deep, and her ball was nowhere to be seen. "Oh, my golden ball! If only I could get it back," she sighed, pressing a hand to her forehead. "I would trade all my fine jewels and my dresses if it was just returned to me." Hearing the words of this desperate princess, a frog's head broke the surface of the water, his bulging golden eyes blinking up at her. His skin was dark green, slick with water, and he regarded her with an expression that, despite his form, seemed strangely knowing. "Princess, why do you look so troubled?" he asked, his voice odd for such a small creature. The princess leapt up. She wrinkled her nose. "My golden ball has fallen into the spring," she said, "but I doubt you can help." For only a moment, the frog pondered her words before plucking an idea from the air. "I don't need your jewels or dresses," the frog said. "But if you promise to treat me as a friend, to share your table with me, to let me sit beside you on your pillow, and to offer me kindness, well, I will bring you your ball, princess." She hesitated. He was only a little frog after all. How could he ever follow her home? So, thinking it an easy promise, the princess agreed. "Very well. Bring me my ball, and I will welcome you into my home." frog dove beneath the water, disappearing into the depth. Moments later, he surfaced with the ball in his mouth and placed it neatly on the bank beside her. The princess snatched it up with eagerness and delight. But in her excitement, she forgot all about the frog, and without nary a thought, got up, ran back home, as fast as her legs would carry her. That evening, as the princess sat down for dinner with her father, the king, she heard a strange sound. Tap, tap, splash, splash, moving up the marble steps of the castle. Then a gentle knock came at the great oak doors.
"Princess, open the door for me. Remember the words we spoke by the tree."
She froze. Recalling her hasty promise, she hesitated before opening the door. There sat the little frog, looking up at her expectantly. She wanted to turn him away, but her father, the king, had overheard. "My dear daughter, a promise must be honored," he reminded her gently. And reluctantly, she let the frog in. He hopped across the floor and hopped up onto the chair beside her.
"Please, princess, share your plate with me."
Swallowing her discomfort, she nudged her golden plate closer. Together, they tucked into a meal fit for royalty. He ate neatly, she noticed. Not at all the slimy, undignified manner she had expected. That night, as she prepared for bed, there was another soft knock.
"Princess, open the door for me. Remember the words we spoke by the tree."
She sighed, but once again she honored her word, letting him rest on the pillow beside her, and for 3 more days they ate from the same plate. They played in the same garden, and they slept in the same bed. On the morning of the 4th day, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, the princess opened her eyes and gasped. The frog was gone. In his place stood a young man, his eyes filled with warmth and quiet gratitude. "Oh, the spell is broken," he said, yawning as he was stretching his arms, as if shaking off the long remnants of a dream. "I was cursed by a bitter witch, doomed to live as a frog until someone saw past what I had become." The princess stared at him warily.
"So all this time, you were just waiting for someone to take pity on you?"
He smiled at her, a little crookedly. "No, I was hoping for someone to keep their word." She studied him and then laughed. It was a sharp, unexpected sound that startled them both. "Well," she said, standing up, brushing off her skirt, "if you're expecting a grand declaration of love, you'll be waiting a while." The prince smirked. "Well, good. I'm not very fond of grand declarations." That morning they parted ways, but they met again, first by chance, then by intention. Their conversations stretched longer each time, slipping into the early hours over candlelight, and cooling cups of tea. The princess learned that he had once been reckless, the sort of young man who had always leapt first and thought about his actions later. And he learned that she had been sheltered, used to a life where people came and went at her very convenience, until the frog on her pillow made her reconsider. Slowly, without realizing when or how, they stopped looking for reasons to see one another and instead simply sought each other's company. He made her laugh, not just the polite laughter expected of a princess, but the kind that snuck up on her and left her breathless. She steadied him, reminded him that not every battle had to be fought alone. And somewhere between the quiet talks and the easy silences, they realized that they had already chosen each other. So when they finally stood side by side, it was not because of some fate or duty, or nor because of some old spell that a witch had bound them together, but it was because of friendship, and that love came easily. And for some, these two at least, there really is a happily ever after. The Bird of Song by Hans Christian Andersen. Winter had come and had wrapped the world in its icy embrace. The earth, cloaked in snow, gleamed like carved marble. The air was sharp, crisp as a tempered blade. Trees stood frozen, their branches glistening like coral or the first blossoms of spring. Above, the night sky was a cathedral of light, where the northern lights danced among 1,000 shimmering stars. By the side of a roaring fire, a father called his children close. Their faces glowed in the flickering light, their breath curling in the cold air beyond the flames. "Come," he said, his voice warm with the promise of a story. "Come closer and listen well. For when the wind howls and the ice rules the land, it is the time for stories." The fire crackled, and the winds raged beyond the circle of warmth, and the father began. By the open sea, there lay a giant's grave, a towering mound upon the shore. At midnight, upon this sacred earth, the spirit of a long-departed king would stir. His golden circlet shone faintly in the darkness, his hair billowed in the wind, and his armor gleamed with the dull sheen of time. But his head was bowed, and his sigh was one of deep sorrow, the sound of a soul unremembered. From over the horizon, a ship came, cutting through the waves, the breath of night full in its sails. Among the travellers was a bard, a keeper of stories, and seeing the sorrowful spirit, he stepped forward and asked, "Why do you mourn? What sorrow lingers in your heart?" The ghost lifted his head. "No song carries my name across the land. My deeds are lost, unsung. My victories, my struggle, all have faded, forgotten by the world I once ruled. Without a song to hold them, I will have no rest. The bard took up his harp, and his fingers danced upon the strings. He sang of the king's courage, of battles waged and peace won, of the fire in his heart and the strength in his hands. As the song rose, the ghost's sorrow melted like mist before the sun. His form shimmered, radiant, and then lifted like the northern lights, vanishing into the heavens above. And as the final note faded, from the grave mound, a small bird took flight. It flew up past the bard, soaring past the ship that brought him. Its song rang clear, bright as the first light of dawn. A voice filled with longing, with home, with memory. It soared over mountains and valleys, across the sea and through the forests. It carried the stories of the past into the hearts of those who listened. It was the bird of song, the song that never dies. Even now, said the father, lowering his voice so the children leaned in closely. Its melody weaves through the world. It does not sing only for heroes, but for love, for laughter, for sorrow, for the truth carried in whispers and in thunderous chorus. It holds the old words, the wisdom passed from voice to voice, like runes placed beneath a tongue to bring speech to the silent. And once, in the days of Vikings, it was carried by a skald, his horn a home for its voice. Later, when might ruled over right and justice belonged to the strongest hand, the bird of song found shelter in quiet places, in the chambers of noble women where legends were written with careful hands, in the murmured tales of wandering peddlers, in the whispers of the old who sat by the hearth and spoke of what had once been. The bird of song did not need grand halls or golden scrolls. It perched wherever a heart was willing to listen. Now, it watched from the eaves, its voice threading through the winter air. Outside, the snow swirled, the ice cracked, and the storms raged. And the winter deepened, burying the world beneath its weight. A town lay shrouded, streets and rooftops hidden beneath the heavy drifts, as though lost in a dream, deep beneath the snow. And over the sleeping town, the birds took flight. The small, chattering sparrows darted between rooftops, their voices bright, filled with gossip of the world below. "We know the buried town," they chirped. "We know its secrets." The crows and the ravens circled above, their harsh cries cutting through the cold. "Dig, dig," they called. "Find what is hidden. The earth is full of things forgotten." Then came the wild swans, their wings wide, their voices rich and deep. They sang not of buried things, but of what would rise again. They sang of the truths that remained, carried forward in hearts and in stories, waiting beneath the snow for the thaw. Although winter buried, it could not destroy, and beneath the heavy silence, life stirred. The notes of the song still rang. They rose, swirling like the sound of church bells, like the echo of the past, like the rush of unseen wings. And at last, the breath of spring moved through the air. The snow shifted, the ice cracked, the sky opened. Sunlight filtered through the gaps, reaching the earth below. The world stirred from its long slumber. The bird of song took flight once more. It sang of what was, what is, and what will come to be. For though the winds howl, though the night might fall, the song will always return. The father leaned back, his tale complete. The children sat in silence, their eyes wide, warmed not just by the fire, by the story now nestled in their hearts. For outside, the wind was howling, but inside, the bird of song now lingered, its melody anew, soft upon the air.